So last night we found out the Wagner Group Jason Buttrill is here with us. Jason, tell me about the Wagner Group. Nasty Russian operatives, right?
Yeah, they've been at the spearhead pretty much of all of Russia's, off-the-books operations.
Yeah.
So every time they want deniability, send in the Wagner Group.
Yeah, and the Wagner Group is, just brutal guys, right?
Yeah, and most of their ranks now are filled with convicts and people they've taken out of gulags.
Perfect. So last night we found that they were going to provide air cover for Hezbollah, should Hezbollah get into the war. So does the Wagner Group have planes? Do they have fighters?
The Wagner Group, and this is a little insider baseball, when I was in military intelligence, we had a chart that had the Wagner Group as fully part of the Russian Department of Defense.
Right.
So they were their own little branch of it. So to answer your question, yes, they can get access to it, to planes and whatever they want easily.
So that means now the fight would be taken to the air with Israel if the Wagner Group does go in, if Hezbollah goes in. Now, the head of Hezbollah called a press conference today. It was supposed to happen, I think, at 1:30 Greenwich Mean Time, which is like 8:30 our time. And I don't speak Hezbollahese. I've had it with bow tie pasta. It's very good.
Hezbollahese?
Yeah, Hezbollahese.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so good. So I don't know what language they speak, but I don't speak it. And
it's a dialect of 1930s German with a whole lot of screaming and anti-Semitism. So I researched this extensively, Glenn.
All right. So what did he say?
It wasn't as bad as I was fearing,
okay,
which
good.
is great. I just want to set this up. Thousands of people showed up to this. Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, is the most powerful man in Lebanon. He's not elected. He's not a president. He's not a prime minister. He's a terror leader, and he's the most powerful person in Lebanon.
Connected to Iran?
Absolutely. Hezbollah exists to protect Iranian interests in Lebanon. That's their sole reason for being. It was interesting. Part of his speech was saying, definitely, no, Iran's not directing this. They did support us, but we promise, just trust us.
Sure.
He did say that right off the bat that this is an American war. He didn't say this was an Israeli war. He didn't say this was a Hamas war. He said this is an American war.
That is trouble.
So fully putting the blame on the United States. He said eventually towards the end, he finally got around to what their role was going to be in this war. And he basically was just kind of affirming things that have already happened. He said that they responded at the border. He said Israel was attacking them at the border. He said that we are repelling and doing our part. He said that it was diverting forces away from Gaza. And this was kind of key to me because he wasn't saying that we are marching across the border and entering this war. He just said they're keeping basically Israel at bay and distracted. That's all he said. Mm-hmm. Now, what does this mean? Well, I think that this is Iran pumping the brakes and then trying to figure out what our involvement's going to be. So how heavily are we going to respond?
Us.
Which is really very disappointing because they've been testing us. They've been attacking us using their proxy militias in Iraq, Syria, and they've been attacking us. And our response has been very weak. If I would have been, Lloyd Austin, I would have hit those same militias while he was delivering this speech. Send a clear and concise message. Of course, they're not going to do that. But they have got to get a lot more tough with their response to their attacks on our forces in Iraq and Syria. They've got to.
Because they see weakness in us, and that's what makes them move.
Yes.
The Iranian supreme leader yesterday came out and said something very interesting, especially since we know that our administration has been trying to open up the ties and the purse strings towards Iran. This is what their supreme leader said yesterday. Death to America is not just a slogan or a chant. It is our country's official policy toward the U.S. Oh, okay. The situation between America and Iran is this. When you chant death to America, it is not just a slogan, it is policy. I have stated the reasons previously for many years, from the 1940s to the 70s, and that is 30 years. The Americans did everything they could against the Iranian nation. They hit Iran in any way they could, financially, economically, politically, scientifically, and morally. If it were not for America's support, if it were not for the support of the U.S. weapons, the corrupt and artificial Zionist regime of Israel would have been destroyed in the first week. It would have collapsed. The Americans are behind this. Wow.
Yeah.
Let's send them another pallet of cash. This is so clear. This is what they mean. And how is it our administration can be sending money to these people?
Time and time again. Every single time. Whilst lying to us by trying to tell us that they're moderate. I can't. That will go down in history as one of the biggest manipulations in history.
It will be remembered eventually as Peace in Our Day from Chamberlain. Hitler doesn't mean it. Peace in our day. I've talked to him. I know his heart.
I've looked into his eyes.
I looked into Pooty Poot's eyes.
Yeah.
By the way, did you see that he is running for re-election? Pooty Poot is running for re-election. And where he's announcing his candidacy is amazing. He is announcing it in front of the Moscow, I don't even know what you would call it, display, I guess, of the Tsar Bomba, the largest hydrogen weapon ever used by far. It was dropped in 1961 for test and then never used again. And he's announcing his presidency with that in the background. What the hell does that mean?
I would wager that's more directed at his own people, trying to just tell them that they're still strong, they're more willing to do it. I actually see it as a bonus that Cold War era people like Putin are. I go back and forth in saying this. It's good that they're in charge of the nuclear weapons. It really is.
Right, because they know still.
They know. He's on record saying that the mutually assured destruction is what kept order,
Right.
A multipolar type order. So to me, and people always want to say, let's get rid of Putin. He's a bad, evil guy. When you're looking at the people that will come up underneath him or after him, they're no better.
Yeah, I know.
There's no like Alexei Navalny that's going to step in and be like, I'm going to fix all this and be friends with everybody. Those don't really exist, and they won't really be allowed to take power. So the people underneath Putin are less predictable, making them worse, in my opinion.
So if I were to read the tea leaves, Hezbollah is there beating their chest today and saying, we're here, we're going to keep them busy, but we're not going to get involved. Iran is saying this is because of the Americans. They are signaling all of their Hezbollah soldiers and all of their, martyrs that are willing to die all over the world. And their attack will not be a military attack. Their attack will be more terror. Yeah. And they're saying here, right? They're saying that destroy America, death to America is not their slogan, but, their policy.
Yeah. We criticize our leaders for not really having a strategy, like what's your end state? Well, they clearly have an end state. It is death to the big Satan, us, death to the little Satan, Israel. For them, those two go hand in hand, and they're playing a long game. Like all these moves. So you go all the way back to, the end of ISIS when there was a power vacuum. Iran immediately, as we were sending them pallets of cash, funded and sent their little foot soldiers, terrorists, all through Iraq, all through Syria, one step closer and closer. Remember, you and I played that video. I think you played that video, that memory video of that. It was a Ayatollah or some spiritual leader from Iran, and he was saying the time is now complete. We are finishing the encirclement of Israel.
Yes.
That is their grand strategy. They're moving little by little towards that goal. What's happening in the Middle East right now is taking them closer to that goal.
So let me ask you one question. I heard a theory, and I think it's accurate. You remember when we sent the cluster bombs? Did you hear me talk about this?
Yeah.
We sent the cluster bombs. That was so odd because we don't use cluster bombs. The whole world is against cluster bombs. They're really, really dangerous. if they don't, a lot of times they don't go off. So kids will be out playing years later and they'll hit a cluster bomb and they'll blow up. It's horrible, horrible. And we know that. Why did we give them to Ukraine? And the theory is that we are running so low on the things that they need, more rockets. We're done. We got to have some for us. We can't keep giving them. That we used the cluster bombs and said, here, use these. And that was a signal to Russia and China and Iran. Oh, they're in trouble. They're expending too much of their military. Keep them going. Mm-hmm. Keep them just sending off all of their stuff.
Yeah. There was a big portion of a show that we had to cut about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was running the numbers of the munitions that we do have. And there were some shocking quotes in that. One of them is that they were explaining how the DoD ordering process works. And they renew their orders for ammunition every 12 months or so. We are, and they were saying there's no new contracts. They were bumbling the whole logistics supply chain to get us restocked because everything is going to Ukraine. We are about a year behind in receiving that ammunition. So even, let's say a huge war did blow up in the Middle East. Let's say Iran directly got involved. How would we even respond? I mean, will we call a timeout for 12 months?
Right. We're 4 years behind on where we should be with rockets. Unless we build new plants to build new shells, we're 4 years away from replenishing what we sent. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying. And if we know it, our enemies know it.
Mm. I mean, you can game that all the way out, too. How are we responding in Taiwan? If China says, they're depleted in Eastern Europe, they're depleted in the Middle East.
They'll walk into Taiwan. You don't have to have a whole bunch of landing crafts. You'll walk in. What are they going to do? It's China. They'll do exactly what they did in Hong Kong. They'll just walk in because America won't be able to help and the world will be too distracted. Okay, thank you for that.
Sure.
Downer.